Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Benghis Khan, and today I am so excited to bring you something I've been thinking about doing for a long time, and that is a fantasy series name tier list. So just judging how much I love these series names. And these are going to cover most popular fantasy and sci-fi series and basically everything that I've read so far as well. And when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about a few different things. First, how does it sound? Does it sound cool? Does it have a nice ring to it? Is it memorable? Is it really sticky? Is it easy for me to remember the name? Is it easy to bandy about discussing it? And do I hear lots of people using the series name? And does it give off the right vibe for the series? And this is for ones I have read. I'll be able to really judge that. And do I really closely associate the actual content of the series with that series name? Is it able to be abbreviated in fun ways and used kind of easily? And is it creative, or is it more on the generic feeling side? I really love those really unique sounding creative titles that feels like it could only be right for that one series. So here we go. Very happy to have some disagreements in the comments. Let me know which you would have put in the S tier here or down at the bottom in D tier. So let's get to it. I'm going to order this alphabetically according to series name, but not counting kind of us and thes at the beginning. So the first main word is how I'm going to order these. So first is one I've just started reading. This is the Alex Verus series, an urban fantasy by Benedict Jacka. And not in love with the name Alex Verus. I think Jacka could have done just a little bit more with that. It's just the main character's name, and not even sure how to pronounce it. Is it Verus? Is it Verus, like the narrator says? I know another urban fantasy, Kate Daniels series, just did the same thing with the first and last name of the main character, and it's okay, but it doesn't give me really what I want from a series name. And then The Band by Nicholas Eames. So I've read Kings of the Wild. I do like the series name The Band, and I love that it's really apt for the series and how it captures the kind of at the core of the world building are these mercenary bands, small groups of fighters who go out questing, and it is the pun on musical bands because Eames is injecting so much kind of into it that's musical references. But the noun phrase the band, it's kind of simple. It doesn't give off a real fantasy vibe, and it's not as cool as the book one title, Kings of the Wild. So I've seen in doing this a lot of authors maybe use up their best title for their debut book, the first book of a series, and Kings of the Wild just has this amazing ring to it. And it's what I've always heard people talk about, and not really even using the series name The Band, if they even know that's the name. And so I think he should have just gone with this one as the series name, Kings of the Wild. But even just The Band, still pretty cool. So this is the sequel series to Faithful and the Fallen. It's Of Blood and Bone by John Gwynne. It's going to be my first D tier. Of Blood and Bone, it sounds cool, it sounds fine, but it's super generic. It is just some of the most generic common fantasy words you could imagine, blood, bone, and I don't get having read it and really liked the series, I don't associate the series with the name, and I think a lot of people have a hard time remembering what it is. It doesn't have that stickiness, and I feel like any of the book titles here, Time of Courage, Time of Dread, Time of Blood, would have been better names for the series. And then the Bobverse books. I do like this, and it's very apt, and I'll probably put it at the top of B, but I don't exactly even know the name of the series. Is it just Bobverse, the Bobverse books, the Bobverse series? Do you pronounce the little I in there, the Bobiverse? So I don't like any ambiguity around pronunciation for these, but it is really apt for a series that is about a kind of clone and then getting more clones of that Bob to go out into space, and it does give off even the right kind of cheeky sci-fi vibe, so it's really perfect for the series, and I do like it. Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. I really like the sound of this series name. Before I read it, I just always loved hearing that name and was really confident I would like it, and then I really did not and DNF'd it halfway through Red Sister. But that does not take away from I feel like the name is perfect for the series. I like the way it sounds. I even like the way it looks kind of visually. Book of the Ancestor. It gives off a kind of religious vibe, which is perfect with all these nuns that are in the book. So I think it's a great name with a great ring to it. And then a similar one, actually, by Gene Wolfe. This is The Book of the New Sun. So another awesome name. I really like that one too, probably even more than Book of the Ancestor. I have not read this yet, but I hear it all the time, so people are constantly using this series name, and I love not only the way this one sounds, but that it's a very versatile kind of phrasing. So there's a sequel series, Book of the Long Sun, and Short Sun, and Earth of the Sun. I like that you can take this and kind of use it for the sequel series as well. And for what I know of the vibe of it, I think gives off that really epic, dense sci-fi vibe. Okay, on to Ryan Cahill's series, which I've not read yet, but do plan to start it soon. This is The Bound and the Broken. And I'm not in love with that series name. I like it better than Of Blood and Bone, and it's not as generic with the wording. It's not, not Blood, Bone, Bound and the Broken. Those are unique names, but I find this a little bit hard to remember. I do have to kind of try to recall it, and do I have it right? I have to think about it. I don't hear too many people using that series name out loud. And I know John Gwynne is a big influence on Cahill. He's very open about that. But I do think this phrasing is just too similar to Faithful and the Fallen for me. It just, something doesn't sit right about that. Here's N.K. Jemisin's The Broken Earth Trilogy. Man, that's solid. For a trilogy name, I think that is pretty solid. I like the way it sounds. Broken Earth, it gives the right kind of drastic vibe for this very dramatic series. And yeah, it just hits. Broken Earth. And it's easy to say, just a little abbreviated. And I think that is a great series name that works. And then here's an interesting one. So almost everyone knows Evan Winter's books by the first book title, Rage of Dragons. That would have been a great series name. This has the same issue as Kings of the Wild. The Burning, it's cool. I do like that. But it just doesn't feel like the right name for this series. The Burning. I don't necessarily get an immediate fantasy series vibe from it. And the Rage of Dragons just has this great ring to it. But it's solid still. I think I do like the feel of it nonetheless. Here's one, Adrian Tchaikovsky, who did just name his series after the first book. So don't know if he even planned to make this a series when he wrote Children of Time. But that is a solid name for the series, but I'm not going to give it really a lot of credit as a series name, because really he just thought of a great name for book one and used it. So I guess I'm going to put it above the authors who did not do that, who I think maybe should have. But Children of Time has a great ring to it. It thematically fits for the whole series. I've just read all three of them recently, and I have no clue what an appropriate, like, actual separate series name could have been. So kudos to Tchaikovsky for just going with the great book one name. But as a series name, I guess it leaves a little something to be desired for me, since he didn't come up with something kind of on its own. But Children of Time has a great ring to it and is extremely memorable. I think it's really easy for people to immediately kind of remember that name and call to mind what the series is and who wrote it. So solid name there. Okay, this is Brian Staveley's epic fantasy trilogy, The Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne. So I read all three books, and I thought all three were just fair, mediocre, fine. Didn't love them, and I think the title is kind of there too. I'll put it at the top of C. I do think it has a nice ring to it. Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne. It gives off that epic fantasy vibe, but I don't really know what unhewn means even, but it does just have a cool sound. And I guess the title is apt for the series when you learn what that unhewn throne actually is in the first book, and it does make sense. But it's okay. It's fine. Nothing special, though, and I guess a little bit memorable, so better than Alex Severus. All right, and then Cradle by Will White. This, I've always felt, is a really odd series name. I don't really like it. And it's odd. I don't know where to even put it here. But it's, just another word that we normally associate with, a baby's bed. And it's the name of the planet where it takes place. So I guess it does make sense as the overarching series name. And but I don't know. I feel like we could have gone with something a little bit better there. All right, this is Daniel Abraham's series. I have not read this. This is The Dagger and the Coin, one of the priority series I want to try. This one, man, I love that name, The Dagger and the Coin. I am just debating whether to put that in S tier. I do really like it. Maybe the top of A for now, but I just knowing what I know about the series, that it does explore kind of this world's political situation where, you know, this mixture of on the banking economic side and on the war politics side. I think it's a unique take on epic fantasy, and the series name does give you that, and it has a nice ring to it, the dagger and the coin, and it really stands out in all of modern fantasy as something unique. So I really like that name. This is The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu, one of my priority series to try. Having not read this is going in S tier. I love this series name. It has that great alliteration, the Dandelion Dynasty. The word dynasty just is really powerful, and dandelion is, you know, this flower. It has this other kind of softer vibe to it. I've always been attracted to this series name, and hoping that when I read it, that the name really resonates for me as being appropriate for the vibe. But do love that name. Very memorable. And here is The Dark Tower series by Stephen King. It's easy to remember, but it doesn't do too much for me. I'm going to throw it down in C. I don't love the sound of it. It doesn't really stand out to me in any way. And I'm guessing, having not read it yet, that it is very appropriate for what's at the heart of this series. And then King used it as the name of the final book, which is really cool. That's very rare for the series name to show up as the title of the final book. But yeah, it's fine. It's a decent title. All right, here's Discworld. So I've only read Mort, and I have planned to try a bunch of other Discworld series. I really like this as a series name. I like the sound of it, and it feels very appropriate for what I know it is, which is this grand overarching series that takes place on this planet and that has many sub-series. And Discworld just has a nice sound to it, and it gives that epic fantasy vibe too. Yeah, I really like that it feels like, oh, this series you're going to be diving through a whole world. It just hits that name. Always liked it. Okay, here's Adrian Tchaikovsky again with his sci-fi duology, the Dogs of War series, the Dogs of War duology. He just took the name of the first book, and props to him again, because it's a solid name for a book. But here, I really feel like it would have been cool to have a real series name, because I struggle to talk about it a little bit, and to separate like the series from just book one. And book two, Barehead, was great, and it's a fun duology as a set, so it doesn't really have an identity as a series, really, without a series name. But I do think it's a solid one, but I'll throw it at the bottom of C, because I think this one would have been cool if he could have come up with a series name. And then, by David Gemmell, I've only read a couple of them, including this one. This is the Draenei Saga, and I don't love that. I'm going to put it at the top of C. It's just a made-up fantasy name, Draenei. I don't really love the sound of it, and it's a little bit hard to remember if you haven't read any of the books, you're not too familiar. I don't hear a lot of people using that name, and I like the word saga. That's cool. It is like a big, I think, 9-book series, spans a lot of generations in time, but I think I would have liked a different name for this one. Not sure what, but it doesn't hit great for me. And then the Dresden Files. This one does hit. It's not particularly creative, but I like how it sounds, and compared to like Alex Verus or Kate Daniels, I think it does a little bit more for this urban fantasy series centered around the protagonist, Harry Dresden. And you get a sense for what kind of series it is. The Dresden Files, he's an investigator. There's going to be some mysteries. And so it just has a nice ring, and then you can abbreviate it too. It's easy to just say Dresden, and people know what you're talking about in the fantasy community. But I do like that full name, the Dresden Files. That to me works really well for the series. And then Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I just finished this whole thing twice, actually. I love the series. The name, though, is just the use of book one, which I think was a good choice, because it is perfect. But maybe it should have just been the series name, or figured out a different... No, it's probably fine as the series name in book one. It works so well. I'm going to go even right below Children of Time, which does the same thing. So, yeah, I think this is a great name. It has a great feel to it. It gives you the right vibe for the series. that we are doing some dungeon crawling here. Carl's at the heart of the series. Basically, most of the time, one of the only POVs. And it also is just like the name Carl. It's a little bit of a surprise. I think the overall vibe you get is that it's going to be a little bit cheeky, a little bit sarcastic maybe, but still very serious. And I like the sound of it. Dungeon Crawler Carl has a lot of the kind of same sounds going on in there. And I do think that works really well. All right, something I've started and really want to continue because the first book was so beautiful. But the name here by Ursula K. Le Guin is the Earthsea Cycle. And that has a really beautiful ring to it. I think I'm going to... I like that a lot. Maybe top of B. The Earthsea Cycle. And knowing the first book, Wizard of Earthsea, it's a little different from that. And it has this kind of poetic, kind of grand scale to that Earthsea Cycle. I feel like I'm going to go on a long journey with it over a long period of time. And just has a nice ring to it. Cycle. It's not too commonly used in series names. And Earthsea takes two words we're very familiar with here, but puts them together, and all of a sudden you have something fantastical, and I really like the sound of that. So, yeah, really like that one. I think I'm even going to move that up. Yeah, that one I'm going to put even above Dresden Files. All right, this is an interesting one. Richard Swann's fantasy series. Everyone knows it as the Justice of Kings because it has one of the least memorable, most generic names you could possibly dream up. It's Empire of the Wolf. And I rarely hear anyone saying that because when you read the Justice of Kings, like there's no wolves in there. Like, the wolf is maybe the symbol of like the main empire, but the first book just does something really unique with this kind of judge character at the heart of it, and we have a trial in there, and the justice aspect is what really sets it apart. Here's where the author should have just gone the Tchaikovsky route and named the series The Justice of Kings. Much more memorable instead of Empire of the Wolf, which I don't even like the sound of it. Empire of the Wolf, it's hard to say. You can't abbreviate it. You can't just say Wolf, the Wolf series. It doesn't... Also, I've read 2 books in there. And it has no connection to the actual content of the series. Just a terrible name all around. Just absolutely horrific. Don't know what Swann was thinking or his publishers. Just go with that amazing book 1 title, Justice of Kings, and everyone would immediately associate your whole series with that. And that has a great sound to it, a great ring to it. Empire of the Wolf. Oh, just brutal, terrible, absolutely horrible series name there that is doing him no favors with selling books or marketing or making people have warm feelings toward the series. Unlike James S.A. Corey, who came up with a great name, that's Daniel Abraham and Ty Franck, the writing duo, The Expanse. I don't know if it's The Expanse series, but The Expanse, people just know it by that. And that has a nice ring to it. The Expanse. It has that sci-fi vibe to it. And it's a very famous now as a TV show title. It works as the TV show title, the book series title. And after reading it and loving it, I feel like it captures some of the thematic heart of it too. So I am going to throw this up into A tier. I like a really short name that hits too, The Expanse. And that is just a perfect title for this series. I'll throw it above Broken Earth. Yeah. All right, back to John Gwynn's original fantasy series, the tetralogy, The Faithful and the Fallen. This one, unlike Of Blood and Bone, really works wonders for me, and it captures the vibe of epic fantasy with heart so well. That's still gritty and high stakes, and I love the alliteration with the faithful and the fallen. Those F sounds in there, it just rolls off the tongue. It's memorable. I'm gonna go S tier. Love this name, Faithful and the Fallen. I think even right now above Dandelion Dynasty. So I understand why Ryan Cahill was following that formula with Bound and the Broken, because it does have a nice rhythm to it. The Faithful and the Fallen. But for this one, it just works perfectly. All right, here's the first Hobbs series in here. So I have put a bunch of these sub-series along with the overarching series name that we'll do later. But this is just the first one, the Farseer Trilogy. Never really liked that name, Farseer Trilogy. Farseer, I get the fantasy vibe from it, but I don't love the sound of that, and not knowing that name or not being familiar with it. I mean, it works better once you do read it and you're just much more familiar with the name and the meaning behind it and the import. But I'll probably just put it down here in C tier. Farseer Trilogy. Hub is not great at titles with a lot of her books. And yeah, this is not a wonderful series name. It doesn't give too much there, just besides a fantasy name that, before reading you don't even know what it is. All right, this one I'm going to go for as an overarching series name for all of Joe Abercrombie's big epic fantasy series, The First Law. That is awesome. I love it. I'm probably biased in how much I love these books at the top, but man, that title, series name, The First Law, people immediately know First Law, what you're talking about, getting this right vibe too somehow, even though it's the name itself, First Law, just relates to something very specific in the series that is not even super important, but somehow it just hits for me with the way it sounds, the vibe of it. It feels right. I love either saying the First Law Trilogy or just the First Law series, just saying First Law. Man, just works. Love it. And then the Foundation Trilogy, or I've read the whole thing, so we call it the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. Never really loved that title. I'm going to go down here even into D tier. Foundation, pretty generic name that doesn't even have a lot of fantasy and sci-fi connotations. I mean, it makes sense as the series name, but I don't love the sound of it. Yeah, nothing too great there. All right, here's Scott Lynch's series, The Gentleman Bastards. What a fantastic name. Lynch is a wizard with titles. He's amazing with book titles. His series name, it captures the right vibe. I'm going to put that right at the top of S tier right now. I love the way Gentleman Bastards sounds. It is a little bit raunchy. It's a bit like swearing, and it does give you the right vibe for what these books are like. And yeah, I love his book titles too. He's just wonderful with titles. So yeah, love Gentleman Bastards. And is it a sequence? I like that word too. The Gentleman Bastards sequence. That just even adds to it even more. It's not a common way to name a fantasy series. And I love the way it sounds. It has a great ring, and perfect for the vibe too of who are at the heart of these books. All right, we're on a roll here because this is the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, and that name has also always hit with me. Just strikes the right chord. How high does it go though? The Greenbone Saga. Man, I love that. I think I'm gonna put it above First Law. I just like the rhythm to it. The Greenbone Saga. Greenbone has a lot of really important meaning in the series. Also, it uses common kind of words, but putting them together, the Greenbone Saga, you get a fantasy vibe to it. And I really associate the series with that name, and easy to abbreviate, Greenbone. Man, I really love that for the series. And it's one where, Jade City, the first book, could have worked for this whole thing, but she really found the right overarching name in a way that some of these other authors did not. All right, Harry Potter, that's always been okay. It's done the job, but nothing special. I'll put it at the bottom of B. That name Harry Potter, just like for this series, it always has felt right. And it makes sense to name the series after the main character, but nothing special about the series name. This one I have not read, but I like the name so much that I put it on. This is His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials, just a very unique kind of phrasing there that a lot of series don't have, and I like the vibe of it. I'm going to go solid A tier for this one. Maybe a top of A tier. Having not read it, I don't really know how perfect of a fit it is. I do just love the sound of that name. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I know this is like the title of the first book, but it is an amazing sounding series name. I've read the whole thing. I think it is the perfect series name, but it's gonna lose some points in that it is also the name of the first book. I'm gonna put it at the top of B tier, but I do think it gives that right cheeky vibe for everything. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has some alliteration in there, and the really long title also makes it kind of unique feeling. It is perfect as for this series. So love that name. And you know what? Even I don't know exactly the plans for the series, if that was always the kind of name for the series, and he stuck it on the first book. But this name is so great. I'll put it up here. It's only going to lose a few points for repeating as the book 1 name, but awesome series name. Okay, The Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. I've read the first 2. It's going to lose some points for kind of repeating the name of the first book, Hyperion. People just associate the series as Hyperion. I don't really hear the series name bandied about too much. Hyperion Cantos. It sounds a little pretentious. I don't know what a cantos are. I know some classic writers have used that. I don't love it. Hyperion is a cool sounding word though. I'll put it up here with maybe Farseer and Dark Tower. It's okay. But it's not too memorable. It doesn't stick too well. Here's The Inheritance Cycle. Is it Cycle? Inheritance by what's his name? Paolini. I read Aragon many years ago. Christopher Paolini. Oh, that's it. So I think it is The Inheritance Cycle. And that is just not very interesting of a name to me. I'm going to put it near the bottom in D tier. It does not give off dragon vibes to me. It's a very generic word there at the heart of the series name, Inheritance. I never really associated it with the series, having read the first 2 books. And yeah, it does give off epic fantasy vibes, but never loved this really match of title and series. So, near the bottom. All right, The Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss. I have not read this, but it's one of the most popular ones, and I do really like this title, The Kingkiller Chronicle. I'm going to put it up near the top of A, because I do think it has a great sound. There's some alliteration in there, and Kingkiller kind of gives off, I think, what I know this story is about, like the right vibe for the series, and people abbreviate it really nicely, Kingkiller. So it's got a lot going for it. Oh man, Mary Robinette Cole's Lady Astronaut series. Calculating Stars, one of my least favorite books I've ever read. The Lady Astronauts, is that the real name? Don't even love the series name. It's okay. Lady Astronauts. It does give you a sense of what the series is about, though. It is apt. I'm going to put it towards the bottom of C. Maybe behind Bound and the Broken. No, behind Dogs of War. Yeah. It's an okay meh kind of name. All right, Lightbringer. Ooh, this series ended up being a huge disappointment. Brent Weeks' fantasy series. I read all 5 and then really hated the last 2. But the series name Lightbringer has a nice ring to it and makes sense too for the series. I do really like that name. I'm going to go, I think, top of A tier for Lightbringer. It's easy to remember. Yeah. Top of A. All right, the Live Ship Traders trilogy. I do like the sound of this. Live Ship Traders, live ship, like, ooh, it intrigues you. Like, what are these live ships? What does that mean? And it's really apt for the trilogy. And I do like abbreviating. It's just calling it Live Ship. I really like this. I'm going to go Live Ship Traders. I'm going to go into A tier with this one. Maybe ahead of Earthsea Cycle. Yeah. All right. The Lord of the Rings. I love the movies, The Lord of the Rings. Have not even gone through the books yet. But that title, it is something truly special as a series title. The Lord of the Rings. It just has an amazing rhythm and sound to it. The way it looks is just so epic, and I think gives off the very appropriately epic stakes and vibe of the series. It just, man, that title just hits so hard. The Lord of the Rings. Couldn't imagine it being anything else. This is a popular series I have not tried yet. The Locked Tomb by Tamsin Muir. I like the name. It's a cool, unique sounding name for a series, and it keeps things very mysterious, but I don't know. I think it's not very memorable. People usually, I think, just think of the series as Gideon the Ninth, as that series, I rarely hear people saying Locked Tomb. It's a pretty decent series name, though. All right, The Magician's Trilogy. And this is such a generic feeling name for a series that feels so unique and impactful for me. I wish there was a better name that Lev Grossman had come up with for this. I sadly have to put this toward the bottom because it's just not doing too much. It's okay. It's an apt name, but it's so generic. It gives you no feel for actually the real uniqueness and quirkiness of this series and how deep it is. Man, I wish that one had a better series name. Okay, here's a big series in Modern Fantasy, Malazan Book of the Fallen, or as I like to think of it, Malazan Book of the Fallen, as it should be thought of, because that is how I always originally thought about it until I heard Steven Erikson discussing the name once on a YouTube video, and he kind of ruined it for me, but it is an epic name, and it gives off the right vibe and sounds awesome. I'm going to put it right below Lord of the Rings. This is really for Malazan Book of the Fallen, because Malazan Book of the Fallen just doesn't have the same ring. I wish Erikson never talked about how it's pronounced, because Malazan, that has such a cool ring to it, this mysterious vibe with those kind of repeating vowel sounds, and then the Z in there. It is a really cool made-up fantasy word, but then to put it in front of Book of the Fallen, it just has a great rhythm. I tend to like these series names with Book of the in them. I like the rhythm of that phrase. And then once you read it and you know kind of the meaning behind the series name, it becomes really deeply impactful too. So yeah, just an awesome series name there. I wish he'd just gone with what sounds better instead of his weird reasoning about Malaz City, just adding the N sound to the end, Malazan. Man, Erikson, just go with what sounds coolest and easier to say for people. But awesome series name. All right, this is Tad Williams' Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series, and I like that. It feels really unique in the fantasy genre for me, and just a cool kind of listing of interesting things next to each other. I've always liked the sound of this. I'm going to put Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn up into A tier, probably, yeah, at the top of A tier. Ooh, even Dandelion Dynasty. Yeah, I'm going to Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Oh, that's such a good title. This is going up. I really love the sound of it, the vibe it gives off. I've not read this, though, so I can't put it too high because I don't know how apt it is for the series or kind of, how I'll associate with it after I read it. So I'll put it at the towards the back of S tier. But awesome name, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. I have no clue what those things are referring to for this series. Just love the way it sounds and the vibes it gives off. All right, this is a recent sci-fi series by Edward Ashton that I really like. The first 2 books are out, Mickey 7, but he has not come up with a series name. I think the series name is just the Mickey 7 series, and it is apt, but it's kind of just a kind of cop-out, boring way like Alex Verus. Mickey 7, it's okay. I'll put it next to Alex Verus, but it's a little more interesting than Alex Verus. All right, Mistborn. So I got into adult fantasy 5 years ago with this series. It holds a special place in my heart. But even before I picked it up, I was attracted by the name. I love the way this word sounds, Mistborn. But is the series name the Mistborn Trilogy, Mistborn Era 1? The fact that it's become like the overarching whole like series name for what's taking place on this planet makes it kind of difficult to work with. But just as a trilogy, even if it's just the Mistborn Trilogy, really solid. If it was just Mistborn, like that really hits for me as a one-word name. But since the complications with that, I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle of A. But what a cool kind of fantasy compound word Sando came up with there with Mistborn. And it's so perfect for this original trilogy. Just absolutely perfect with the characters at the heart of it and the world building. It just hits right, sounds great. Just wish it had a clear kind of name for each individual series or the overarching thing. It's a little confusing. All right, The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I've always liked that name. It's solid. The Murderbot Diaries. It works. It works. It sounds good. It's memorable. I'm going to go right behind Mistborn on that one. It's easy to abbreviate with Murderbot. But the Diaries, it does give you the right sense of how this is kind of a meandering kind of tale told to us by Murderbot, just about lots of its different experiences. So, yeah, I think it's a really apt title. It has a nice ring. This one, unfortunately, does not. So this is Ian C. Esselmont's Novels of the Malazan Empire. And a lot of people just think of this as a kind of supplemental series to Book of the Fallen, and the name Novels of the Malazan Empire does not do anything to dissuade you that that is the case. It is just a generic sounding title. Novels in the series title, just, man, that weakens the whole thing. Honestly, though, it is kind of apt because the series doesn't have too much of a kind of coherent identity. It really is kind of all over the place. And so it does kind of give off the right vibe, but it's not a great series for me, not a great name. Novels of the Malazan Empire, and it really just feels like it's riding the coattails of Malazan Book of the Fallen. I'm going to put that towards the bottom. Maybe, oh man, I think it's a little bit more interesting than Empire of the Wolf, so not exactly at the bottom. Okay, Old Man's War by John Scalzi. Pretty cool title, but I think that is just the case of came up with the right title for book one and didn't come up with any better series name, and so kudos to him for going with something that is memorable, but kind of just couldn't come up with that really amazing overarching series name. But the series is kind of meh, and so the first book is really the only thing that really matters for it. But it'll clump here with Dungeon Crawler Carl with doing that same thing, but with a good title, so I think it was a good choice for Scalzi. And then The Poppy War. So this is by R.F. Kuang using the first name of the book one and just turning it into the series name with the Poppy War trilogy. And it's good, it's okay, it has a nice sound, but nothing special about this name. And I think I'm going to put that in C tier, honestly. Maybe above The Dark Tower. Nothing special there. Okay, Brian McClellan. This is a series I have not read, but I know very popular. This is Powder Mage, and I do like the sound of that one. I think we're going into A tier for Powder Mage. It gives you a really good sense of that this is flintlock fantasy with gunpowder at the heart of it. I think Powder Mage, that's a cool name. I might go pretty high for this one. Maybe even near the top of A tier. Yeah, really cool name, Powder Mage. Love that. This is a recent self-pub series. I've read the first 3 books. Got book 4 ready to go here. The Protectors of Prytani series by Mike Mullman. And I like that name, Protectors of Prytani. We got a lot of alliteration going on. It has a nice ring to it. It gives the right vibe. I'm going to go solid B tier for Protectors of Prytani. Yeah, maybe right behind Bobverse. Gives you a sense that this is happening in the old fantastical version of Britain, and with druids, I think, yeah, Becoming a Druid, great book title for book 1, and I do like that this has a different overarching series name. All right, now we're into the R's. So we have Realm of the Elderlings, the overarching series name for Hobbs' big series, and I really like it. It gives that epic scope of this overarching series of a bunch of sub-series, and it's very memorable. It has a kind of fantasy name at the heart of it, Elderlings, to give you that real epic fantasy vibe. I think I'm going to go even higher here, maybe right there. Realm of the Elderlings. It has this I feel like this, when you see it, when you visualize the lettering, it just has an interesting vibe with realm and elderlings, the repeating of the EL, and man, I like just the sound of it, and gives that right vibe, I think. All right, Pierce Brown. This is an interesting one. The Red Rising series. Is it the Red Rising trilogy? Is it the Red Rising saga? I think is kind of the overarching name of the series, and that is taking the amazing book one title and leveraging that for the series name, Red Rising Saga. I do really like it. The fact that he adds on the word saga, I think, really prevents me from docking too many points from just reusing the book one title. I think this name really hits. I'm gonna go top of A. Red Rising, love the alliteration there. It does give a kind of like YA feel to it, which I don't love for it, knowing what at least the first 3 books are like. But I do really love that title. Very memorable and great to say. Red Rising Saga. Saga makes it more epic. Yeah, solid title there. All right, Remembrance of Earth's Past by Cixin Liu. This is an interesting one. I think that title has a cool sound to it and a nice vibe, but it's not very sticky. No one remembers that. Instead, they say the 3 Body Problem trilogy or just 3 Body Problem. Here's one I think maybe they should have just went with this as the series name. But I do like Remembrance of Earth's Past. It is very apt, has a nice epic sci-fi vibe to it. I'll go into B tier, maybe above Children of... Yeah, I'll go top of B tier. I do like Remembrance of Earth's Past, but the fact that a lot of people don't really remember that, I think costs it for me. Okay, another interesting one. This is Rayura Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. Before I heard the author kind of correct pronunciation on a YouTube video, Rayura, I thought it was kind of like Rayuria, I can't even remember how Reynolds does it in the audiobooks, if he does it right. But it's a little bit hard to say. It looks a little strange the way it's typed and spelled. It looks like Rayuria, so it trips people up. But it does give the right epic fantasy vibe. I like the alliteration with Revelations. Rayura Revelations has a nice ring to it. So I'm going to throw that in B. But one that I like the sound of but has its issues and is a little bit tough to deal with. So I'll go top of B tier. The Second Apocalypse series by R. Scott Baker. I have not read any of these yet, but I put that in here because it's a big series in Modern Fantasy, and I love the name. Second Apocalypse. Even like the sub-series names, like the Prince of Nothing trilogy or Aspect Emperor, like all of the sub-series names or overarching series names are cool. I'm going to go into S tier with this one. I think Second Apocalypse just really hits hard, and knowing what that series does, I think that's probably pretty appropriate. All right, Shadows of the Apt, one of my favorite series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. What a cool series name, Shadows of the Apt. When you read it, it's extremely, I don't want to use that pun, it's extremely appropriate for the themes and the content of the series, and it has a cool sound to it. It sounds really unique. Shadows of the Apt. Man, I'm going to go pretty high with this one. I really love the way it sounds. Interestingly, before I read it, I think the title intimidated me a little bit. It made me feel like it was going to be very dense and complex, like Malazan Book of the Fallen, but it's actually extremely accessible, not densely written at all. So if the series name gives you that vibe, that is a kind of something that maybe is not great about the series name, but I love the way it sounds. Shadows of the Apt. All right, here's a series I love, historical fiction. I don't even know the series name, and that's part of the problem, by Bernard Cornwell. This is the Richard Sharp series, the Sharp series, just Sharp. Definitely appropriate for his name to be at the heart of the series, but it's just nothing special. It is memorable, but it's nothing too great, and I don't even really know what the real name is. Even looking on his website, I see him calling it different things, and just even if it's just Sharp, I like it, or the Richard Sharp novels. It's okay. I'll put it next to the Magicians. All right, here's a heavy hitter in the genre, A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. So even if you took book one's title, A Game of Thrones, that is tremendous. The show took that. It's a great title. But as the overarching series name, A Song of Ice and Fire is awesome. It's spectacular. It is poetic, has an amazing sound to it, and gives you the right vibe for this series. A Song of Ice and Fire. Man, that is just spectacular. Putting it right up here towards the top of S tier. Man, I love how poetic that series name sounds. Martin is amazing at titles. And here's another one I like, the Stormlight Archive. So I think book one's title of this one, The Way of Kings, is more perfect in just the way it sounds, the vibe of the series. But as an overarching series name, the Stormlight Archive, Stormlight gives you that secondary world, epic fantasy vibe. I like Archive, makes it really unique, and it fits with the series since all these titles are kind of names of in-world books, and it is perfect for the series. I like the sound of it. I'm going to put it somewhere in A. I think the Stormlight Archive. You know what? It's going up into S tier. I love that title. There we go. Stormlight Archive. I'm going to put it even above First Law. Stormlight Archive, First Law. Greenbone Saga. Oh, this is tough. All series names I love. All right, this is some self-pub by Von Roycroft. This is a trilogy, the Sundered Nation trilogy, starting with The Severing Sun. I really like the sound of Sundered Nation, and it's perfect for what is at the heart of this series, where there's this division between these two kind of Germanic-like tribes. And I like the sound of it, Sundered Nation. I'm going to put that up in A tier, maybe above Murderbot. Yeah, solid series name. All right, one of my favorite series, Sun Eater, or the Sun Eater Saga by Christopher Rocchio. Let's go. I love the sound of that. That's going up here towards the top of S tier. The Sun Eater Saga. Already mentioned, I do love, putting saga onto the end of names. Makes it epic. But Sun Eater, and that is the perfect vibe for this series. It sounds so cool. It's taking some common English words, but putting them together and giving you something very much in, epic sci-fantasy realm. Man, it sounds so cool. And this is an example, again, of a lot of books in here have amazing titles, but he found something that just works as the overarching series name. Sun Eater. It's easy to abbreviate, so memorable. Man, I love it. Love it. Christopher Rocchio, well done. Unfortunately, I don't feel the same way about Tales of Tremaine by R.R. Virdi. So this is one where he should have just gone with the first binding as the series name. Same with Justice of Kings. And honestly, I'm going to put it down here, right next to Richard Swan's series, because Tales of Tremaine, I've read that whole long first book. I have no clue what Tremaine is. Is it a name of a person? Is it a place, a city, a continent? I have no clue what this is. And it does not give off the vibes of kind of Silk Road, epic fantasy. I think of this old children's character, Johnny Tremaine. It just is not the right vibe, and not a big fan of this. The first binding, I really like that as a title, and people are always saying that. But has anyone ever heard anyone use the series name Tales of Tremaine on YouTube when they're discussing the series or this book? I guess I'm going to start to see it as book 2 gets released later this year. But man, I hope it even becomes clear why it's named that. But yeah, do not like that series name at all. Okay, another Hobbs sub-series, the Tawny Man trilogy. I like the sound of this one. It's an odd name. It is apt for the sub-series, and I do kind of like it, the Tawny Man trilogy. It rolls off the tongue, and it's interesting and unique feeling. I'm going to put it maybe into the top of, no, ahead of Dresden. You know what? Dresden, unfortunately, Dresden Files is kind of mediocre as a title. I'm going to put that down into B. Tawny Man trilogy up into A. Temeraire, one of my favorite series, big 9-book, alternate history, kind of Napoleonic Wars with dragons kind of series. Temeraire is the name of the main dragon character at the heart of the series, and it's okay. I like the name, and I like that is the name of the series, but it's just okay. Similar with Sharp, doesn't do too much that is special or unique as the actual just series name all alone. So, towards the bottom of C. Okay, we have The Wolf, which I have not read yet, but I have all 3 books by Leo Carew ready to go. What even is the series name? It's Under the Northern Sky, which just does not sound like the name of a fantasy trilogy. So I do like it better though than some of these at the very bottom. I'm gonna put it towards the bottom of D because this is so hard to remember. I don't think I've ever heard anyone use the series name when they've talked about these books. It's always the wolf, the spider, the cuckoo. Man, there must have been a better name than Under the Northern Sky. Man, that just feels more like an easy listening music album. I don't know. It does not give off the right vibes. It's so generic and not memorable. So brutal series name there by Leo Carew. And sorry that I had to put that in there because I don't have too many just awful series names to really rant about, and that's one of them. Yeah, terrible. All right, then The Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. So one of my favorite series, but this name just does not feel like the right vibe. It's okay. The Warlord Chronicles gives you a gritty vibe. Makes sense as a King Arthur tale, but Arthur's not even really at the heart of the story. It's okay, I guess. Put it above the Poppy War, but I do not really associate the series with the way the Warlord Chronicles kind of sounds as a name. It feels like that's the name of a different series than the one I love. Really wish Cornwell to come up with something better for that trilogy. All right, now the Wheel of Time series. What a great name. That's going into S tier. It's so sticky, so easy to remember. And when I hear the Wheel of Time, it calls to mind the series and the characters and the situation. That's going towards the top. I'm going to put it right near the top of S tier. Has a nice sound to it. And it is also just not reusing like one of the book title names. So it's really perfect. Perfect as this long, giant, big epic fantasy series. And with the themes too. Also just perfect. We just got 3 more. This is Jenny Wirtz's big epic fantasy series, The Wars of Light and Shadow. I like the rhythm of that, the scope of it, but it's so generic in the words, wars, light, shadow. It's tough to remember. I've always found it hard to remember, and I don't hear too many people using this series name. I don't think it's been helping her kind of get it out there and sell the books and get people reading it. But it sounds good too, so it's kind of like the Warlord Chronicles, where it's an okay name, but I feel like there would have been a better one somehow. But it's okay, The Wars of Light and Shadow. All right, this one, I put it down here towards the bottom of the alphabet because the official series name that is on the spines of the new trade paperbacks is the Wax and Wayne series. And this is a pun that I have always hated. I think it is my least favorite series name that exists in modern fantasy. The Wax and Wayne series, like, I hate that this pun, Wax and Wayne, is the reason why Sando named his main character Waxilium. It's just always such a dumb name to me. At least Wayne is just like a normal name. But Wax and Wayne is a series, like, why does this pun need to be the name of the series? Let's just call it Mistborn Era 2. I would have given it a C, but it's okay. I like referring to this as Mistborn Era 2. Wax and Wayne, just brutal series name. And then The Witcher, that's okay. It gives off, I think, the right vibe for this series. I've only read book 1, but nothing special about that one. It's going in C, I think. All right, so that is it. There's my series name tier list from S tier all the way down to the ones I really hate that don't do anything for me. But I think I'm going to keep everything how it is. Lord of the Rings, Song of Ice and Fire, Sun Eater, Wheel of Time, Malazan, Book of the Fallen, Gentle and Bastard, Shadows of the Apt, Greenbone Saga, Stormlight Archive, First Law, Faithful and the Fallen, Memory, Sorrow and Thorn, Second Apocalypse, The Dandelion Dynasty. Oh, all of those just hit for me so well and call to mind, I think, the vibe of those series and the amazing, awesome, epic events and characters that we follow in them. So I love those, and a lot of these other ones in A tier and B tier even I like a lot. And just authors and publishers, I think, could have done a better job with the ones towards the bottom of C and into D. Just some real, just mediocre, nothing burgers there with Under the Northern Sky or Tales of Tremaine, Empire of the Wolf, or Novels of the Malazan Empire, just Of Blood and Bone, just kind of things I find it hard to even remember and associate with those series at all. So when your series name is amazing and hits, it just does you a world of good. I think it gets people more excited about the series and gets them excited to chat about it. And yeah, I absolutely love the authors that took the time to figure out that perfect, poetic, awesome sounding series name that captures something essential about that series. So there's my tier list. Hope you enjoyed this very long video, and let me know your disagreements or other ones that I didn't include in here and where you would put them. So yeah, I'll catch you later.